I'll tell you something about Jerry while he's getting ready. Jerry and I do a lot of storytelling in senior citizens. One of the things that we do with wandering storytelling this year is gone into senior citizen places and told stories. Jerry's the one that sets all this stuff up, and I've been able to go storytelling with him a lot of times, and I'd love to hear him tell stories. So y'all are in for a treat. Jerry Young.
All right, well, let me tell y'all something. Back in World War II, when the war started, a lot of the whole, just about all American young men got drafted into the Army and Navy and different branches of the service. And Johnny got drafted into the Army. Well, now, Johnny didn't get in a hurry to do anything. Johnny, he just never got in a hurry to do anything. And so he went through his basic training, got out of basic training. I don't know how he got out at the same time everybody else did, but he got out of his basic training. And they got a bunch of guys together, going to send them overseas. So they issued a call throughout the base for these guys to come and get their weapons. Well, Johnny, like I said, didn't get in a hurry to do anything, and he got there last. When he got there, the quartermaster told us that we're out of rifles. He said, "What? Yeah, we're out of rifles? What do you mean you're out of rifles? I gotta go to war, and I'm gonna be fighting, and they're gonna be shooting at me, and I gotta be shooting back at somebody, shoot back for something. How am I gonna do that?" Well, this quartermaster here was a clown, you know, and he said, "Well, I don't know, Johnny, maybe you can take your finger and go bang, 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 bang." Johnny, oh, dang, that ain't gonna work. So he left. Next day, they issued another call to get their bayonet. And again, Johnny didn't get in a hurry to go anywhere, do anything, so he was late again. When he got there, the quartermaster last said, "Well, you're last again, Johnny, we're out of bayonet." He said, "I didn't get a rifle yesterday, and I don't get a bayonet today. How am I going to go to war and fight? What am I going to do?" Well, this clown, the quartermaster said, "You just get your stick. Hold it out there. Stick it, stick. And you can fight that way." Well, Johnny got sent off. He got sent up to the front. He was in a foxhole, and he was scared of everything. He was scared to death. He lay down the bottom of that foxhole with bullets and everything flying around, people fighting all around and everything. He wouldn't move. And it finally got quiet. Well, he got quiet. He crawled up there, looked, peeked up over the side of that foxhole, looked all around, and there wasn't nobody around there. He said, "Well, maybe the war's over." He looked up over that foxhole again. There was one German soldier out there in the field. Johnny said, "This ain't gonna work." He said, "I know it ain't gonna work. I'm a dang fool for doing it, but it ain't gonna work. But I'm gonna try it anyway." And he stuck his hand in the both side of the foxhole like it said, bang, 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 bang. Flipped, the German soldier fell off. He looked all around, didn't see nobody. He said, "Surely somebody else had to shoot." So he laid on his belly, crawled out there where the German soldier was, and sure enough, he was there. He was full of holes and dead. So Johnny crawled back to his foxhole, lay there. Some more soldiers came. He was bang, bang, bang. Some more of them fell off. Then he got brave. Like a cowboy. He jumped up on the side of the foxhole, he jerked out both his guns. Bang, 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 bang. The German soldiers was falling everywhere. And so he got back down his foxhole, looked, and here come a little German soldier, probably about that tall, marching straight toward him. Johnny waited, he got a little bit closer. Bang, 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 bang. Nothing. He didn't fall, nothing. He kept marching, coming at him. Got closer. Bang, bang, bang. Still didn't fall. He kept marching, coming at him. Got close. Johnny jumped up on the side of the foxhole, tried to stick out. Stickity, stick. Little German soldier kept on coming. Stickity, stick. Little German soldier run into him, knocked him down in the foxhole. Stomp, right over the top of him, broke his arm, broke his leg, gave him a concussion, marked out the other side of the foxhole. And Johnny heard him say as he walked away, "Tankity tank."
Oh, Jerry's always a treat. rubber.
Close enough.
It's German. Yeah. You didn't put the umlauts out of it.
That's what's true. Barbara's another one of our presenters, so look up her workshop too.
And you can tell by my speech, I am not a local. I come from Michigan, and I like the old stories. Among the hills of Cornwall, beside the Severn Sea, lived the daughter of a lordly race, Alice of the comb named she, Alice of the comb named she. Fair she was, comely, tender, tall, fine, standing on youth's threshold, proud, with eyes divine. Those eyes like summer waters when the sea is soft and bright, those eyes so large, clear, blue, her mother's joy and light. The manner of her stateliness, the richness of her gowns, in all of Cornwall's maidens, no equal could be found. And she knew she was lovely. Men sought her far and near, but cold she was like graven stone. To suitors she turned deaf ear, for Alice loved another, a valiant knight so bold, loyal soldier of a Stuart king, the fair Bevil of Stowe. Then message came of banquet at the stately halls of Stowe, of wassail and of dancing, and oh, she would go. The casket poured forth jewel and gem, for Alice would look her best. Robes precious and luxurious were unfolded from their breast. Jewels like stars at midnight shone within her hair, her clothes the finest velvet, rich, soft, beyond compare. And on her hand she wore a ring, the stone gleamed clear and bright. She looked upon the mirrored glass, proud eyes filled with delight. It was the day, the hour, the time. The page waited for his call. Her mother spinning at her wheel, Alice entered the old oak hall. May all good angels aid thee, and hear a mother's oath. Oft shall I pray tonight, dear, may Sir Bevil pledge his troth. But haughty was the answer as she gazed into the glass. She trusted only in those eyes filled with pride and arrogance. Oh, I'll sway Sir Bevil's heart now. With eyes like these so fair, any queen would pale before me. I have no need of prayer. Those words but barely spoken, when came shrieks and cries and sobs, there came a flash, a beam of light, she vanished. Silent, gone, while tones of mystic music filled the dark night air, where once there stood a lovely maid, fair Alice, no longer there. East and west they sought her, in northern parts and south, but never more seen in that land. Her mother's tears cried out. The moon did wax, the moon did wane. The months wore slowly by, and crones each night beside the hearth told tales of Alice gone. And then, one day, the gardener spied among the roses grown a mound the likes he'd never seen, and upon it something shone. It was the ring, that self-same ring Alice wore that fateful night, the ring she wore upon her hand when she vanished out of sight. And written in the border, within the band there hung the tracery of fine runes in the ancient Cornish tongue. But none could read the old tongue, long years since last it spoke, until one day a priest did come. Gray shadow wrapped in cloak, long years he served at altar, a solitary form. Men said he heard and understood when spirits speak and roam. Hear the language of his youth as he looked inside the ring. The earth must hide both eyes and pride. 'Twas written in the ring. And when those words were uttered in the garden by the mound, there came a sound, a low, faint cry from the grass on the ground. And they beheld, oh, wondrous strange, a small creature there did grow, dressed in a fine, soft velvet skin, just like Alice's robe. And they beheld, oh, wondrous strange, her eyes sealed fast and tight. She groped upon the rich dark earth in everlasting night. And then the ancient man, he wept. He knew what all this meant. That maiden's pride brought on her doom, forever to lament. For all her fine and richer gray had changed into a skin. Those once large eyes forever closed, never a heart to win. Oh, woe is she, and curse that day, a lovely maid no more. She now was a creeping thing, dark mother of the moles. So take good heed, fair maidens, if ye gaze in the glass at home, and put your trust in face and eyes, think of Alice of the comb, think of Alice of the comb, the Lady Mole.
We got time for one more. I have two more. Let's see who gets. Harry Lott.
Okay, let's see if I'm waking up. So I'm going to share a personal tale. I usually share folk tales, but I did this one at our celebration in Ohio, so here we go. I entitled this, To Be or Not to Be Afraid of Spiders. I developed my fear of spiders when I was 10 years old. And the cause of that fear of spiders was my younger brother. Any of you have younger siblings? I was a loving, caring, protective sister. I have no idea why he would have done this to me. Of course, there was that time when he was 2 and I was 5 and was stolen. Do people really remember things that happened to them when they're 2 years old? We were living in a community outside of Columbus called German Village. Tiny little backyard, brick-lined. I was outside under our scrawny little tree reading a picture book. I was 5. My brother was in a metal pedal car. Do any of you remember those? Well, having a brick yard, it sounded something like this. Rattle, 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 thump. That was him hitting the fence. And then he'd back up. Rattle, 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 thump. Well, after a little while, I realized I wasn't hearing that sound anymore. So I looked up from my book reluctantly, just in time to see 2 burly arms of a man picking up my brother in that car and hefting it over the 3-foot fence. Now I have to tell you, I paused for a few moments thinking, I could be an only child again. And then because I was 5 and I could reason some things out, I thought, no, I'd probably just get into a lot of trouble. So I opened up my mouth and I yelled, Mom, Tim is being stolen. Now you don't know my mom. love her to death, but she has never been one to move quickly on anything. She shot out of the house, leaped over that 3-foot fence like a gazelle on the savannah. And before I could say my brother's full name, Timothy Jean Cold Iron, she was back with him in her arms. He wasn't crying or anything. The car was gone, but he was back and he was unharmed. So why would people fight against me? I was always a loving, protective sister. Well, there was that one time. I was 8 and he was 5. We were visiting my aunt and uncle. We loved going to their house. My aunt was an exceptional cook. She made everything from scratch. My uncle, as soon as we would get in and out of the car, he would give us money to go down to the corner store. He'd say, here, go get yourself something while dinner's being finished. So we walked down to the store, and this particular time that I remember, my uncle had given me 3 dimes. My brother was 5 and in kindergarten. I was 8, finishing up 2nd grade. And we stood outside the store, and I handed him a dime. And he said, is that half? Half? What are they teaching these kids in kindergarten? I didn't know about half until I was in 1st grade. Anyway, I said, it's your fair share. That wasn't a dime. We went in, and some of you are at least my age, so I know you'll remember this. We walked in, and there it was. The glass glistening under the lights. The glass case a mile long, filled with penny candy. Red Hots, lemon drops, gumdrops, jelly beans, candy necklaces, bullseyes, you name it. I picked quickly because I didn't want him to notice that I was getting twice as much as he. It seemed to work. We both paid for our candy, we left the store, we started down the street, and he looked at me, he looked at my bag, he looked at his bag, he looked back at my bag. He said, why is your bag bigger? I remembered something our mother said to us. I said, Timothy, trying to sound more grown up than I was. Don't you remember what Mother always says? Women are better shoppers than men. He seemed to buy that. But you know, they say revenge is the dish best served cold. He waited 2 more years. I was 10, he was 7. There aren't a whole lot of things that a 10-year-old girl and a 7-year-old boy play in common, but we both like to build things out of Legos. So we were in the backyard. Yes, they had Legos way back then. We were in the backyard on a blanket. We were building things out of Legos, and being the loving, protective sister I am, I thought, he's probably getting dehydrated. So I said, would you like a glass of water? And he said, Kool-Aid. Ooh, that sounded even better. And so I said, okay, I'll see if we can have some. To this day, I don't know if he knew there was none in the refrigerator. I went in, Mom said, sure, you can have some, but we'll have to make some. Oh, that's fun too. And I got to pick the flavor. Cherry. So we mixed up that red dye number 5 in that water. Poured in that shiny, granulated sugar, stirred it up really well, poured 2 glasses over ice, and I went back outside and I handed him his glass. I took mine, we both took a drink, and then laughed at each other because we had red mustaches. That's when I noticed that in my absence, he had used all the Lego bricks and had built a huge house. I said, that's pretty good. He said, thanks. There's a surprise inside. I said, a surprise? I know, I was the oldest. Should I have been that naive? So I started to open up the little Lego door, and he said, no, take off the roof. So I took the roof off. And then I was covered with thousands of legs all over my face, my arms, my chest. I said, get them off, get them off, get them off. My mother came running outside. She's yelling at me, me, "It's okay, they're just granddaddy long legs, they won't bite." I didn't care. I didn't care if they bit or not. I wanted them off of me. So she was brushing them off, and I looked over, and there's my brother rolling around in the grass laughing. And that's how I developed my fear of spiders. A 7-year-old. Now, I'm no longer afraid of spiders. That's another story for another time, but I will tell you, it's due to a group of 7-year-olds.
Give all our storytellers tonight a big hand.
Y'all be sure to sign up now for tomorrow, because if you don't, we only got one storyteller left for open mic. We're going to have it twice tomorrow night, tomorrow. So be sure to sign up if you hadn't, and get your name in. I want to introduce, before we take a break, we're going to take a break in just a minute, but I want to introduce to you our featured teller, Adam Booth. And we'll be performing tonight in our evening performance, and we're glad to have you from West Virginia, where all the good storytellers come from, I think. We'll be back here at 7:45 sharp for the performance, and there are snacks, and there are books on sale, and plenty of space to wander around if that's what you want to do, stretch your legs. So, have at it. Who is our interpreter tonight? So we have some folks who have asked for an interpreter. One of the things I like about the Kentucky Storytelling Association is at every conference we have interpreters, so that we invite and we accommodate people who have special needs, and we pay for that. We just do it because we think it's important, and that's one of the things I really love about Kentucky Storytelling Association. I've only been a member of the Kentucky Storytelling Association about 4 years. I came here from North Carolina, having been a part of the North Carolina Storytelling Guild, and then came here and found these folks, and I really enjoyed being here. So we're going to give away another door prize real quick, and I'm going to ask Patricia, Pat, my friend Pat, to come up here and pick out the name.
Anything to do? Okay, and it is Pam Cropper Vice.
You can come and get it now, Pam, or you can get it later. She's going to get it now. I don't blame her. Pam is a new storyteller. She's been a part of our Versailles Story Circle, and she just showed up one night, shy as could be, and the next thing you know, she's telling stories at Wandering Storytelling and everywhere, and she tells great stories. So Pam is, I take a little credit for Pam because I've introduced her to the world, but other than that, she's a great, all right, tonight we've got a couple of things.
To do.
One of the other things that I love about the Kentucky Storytelling Association is what we call our Youth Teller program. We reach out to youth in Kentucky, invite them to share a story via the internet. They get judged, and every year we have 5 or 6 youth storytellers. Deborah Kumar has been heading this program up, and she has done a wonderful job with it. Tonight, we have one of our youth storytellers, and this one's a pretty special one to me, because I've had the opportunity to be on the same venue with Sky. I do a thing in Halloween at a farm north of Georgetown, and one night I was telling stories, and I said, "Does anybody know any Jack Tales?" And Sky raises her hand, and I looked at her. I didn't recognize her because it was dark. I looked at her, I thought, well, I know her. And so I said, come here and tell us your Jack story. So she did a wonderful job, and she's been there several times now and told some great stories. So without further ado, she started at the youngest age you could start this program, and she has been in our youth storytelling, our torchbearer program. She's been chosen every year. That's how good a storyteller this young lady is. And she, every time I hear her, every time I see her, I don't know that I told a lot of stories, my brother said, when I was young, but I'm not sure I was as good as Sky was. And so we're going to have Sky come up and tell a story. And share with us this evening. Sky Bird.
Okay, this story is called Jack and Auntie Ugly. Before we start, I actually learned the story off of Octavia Sexton. And so here it is. Now, it was way back in a long time ago. And there's this boy, and his name was Jack. And he had two brothers, Will and Tom. He lived with his mama up in England up there. And there's a king. And he had a daughter, but his daughter had been kidnapped. And there was a great reward for whoever could save her. And you thought the people would be rushing to save the king's daughter. But no. And the reason why they wasn't, because that girl had been kidnapped, Auntie Ugly. She was so ugly that her nose just slung over her head. And her nostrils wide. And her ears filled with hair sticking out. And that is not the only thing. Auntie Ugly stunk. Woo-wee, she was right. Well, you could smell her from like 20 miles. And she's like, boiled eggs, ooh. Now, Auntie Ugly hadn't had a bath in over 150 years. Wow. And so, now, Will was the oldest brother, so he said, Mama, I'm going to go try to save her. She said, okay, so she retched some white bread, some milk, and he started up the road, just walking up the hill, and there's, you got anything to eat or drink? I'm not thirsty. Well, he had that little white bread, and he had that milk, but he looked her in the eyes and said, nope, I don't have a thing. And he went on walking up, and she said, thank you kindly. He got up there, and he could smell the ooh. And he went to the door, and he knocked. Oh, she was ugly. Now his mama had gave him some eye balm to kind of rub on his eyes so she didn't strike him blind. And so he drove it on. He said, oh my, somebody to play with. Well, I'm here to rescue the king's daughter. Well, if you want the king's daughter, you'll have to do something for me. Well, what do I have to do? And she reached behind the door and pulled out a hackle. And the hackle was a board full of nails. And she laid it down there. She laid it on a stump, and she pulled on her shoes, and she unbuckled. She hasn't had her shoes on in over 200 years. And her toenails grew out 15 feet long and broke everywhere. And then she stepped up, did a somersault, landed down feet first on the hat, and it didn't work. Well, I can't do that. Those nails will go right through my feet, and no, So he went down there and came back. Nobody beat that idiot. No. She's just outsmarting everybody. And Tom, the second oldest brother, he said, I think I have an idea. He stood on a piece of metal, traced the outlines of his feet, and cut them out. And he said, well, if I slip these in my socks, right before I get there, and when she makes me jump on that hackle, it won't happen. So he put them in his socks. And he got there, rubbed his eyeball on. That same old woman asked him for food. He said he didn't have any good food. Okay. Oh, my, another one to play with. What? I'm here to rescue the king's daughter. Well, if you want the king's daughter, you'll have to do some work. Well, what do I have to do? She pulled up that hackle, laid it down on that stone, and she stepped up, did a somersault, landed down on her bottom. Said, oh, I can't do that. No, that must go right through me and it'll kill me. I'll just be going home. Oh, no. You have to do something for me. Well, what do I have to do? Well, I'm going to give you some fruit jars and you're going to go to the yard and scrape all my lovely toe jam out of my lovely toenail picket fence. Ew. Oh, that goes so well with bread and butter. So we went up there, scraped and put in fruit jars. Oh, you could imagine how easy. Woo! Holler, go take a bath. Went, come back, nobody could beat him. Well, Jack, he wasn't very bright, but he had a good heart. And so he went down there with some stale cornbread, some grape juice, and he met that one. Just walking. Gave that to eat or drink, I might have thirsty. Well, a matter of fact, I do. I mean, I don't mind sharing with you if you don't mind eating it and drinking it. That'd be mighty kind of you. Sit down, gives her some of that stale cornbread, gives her some of that grape juice, and then she turns in to the most beautiful angel Jack had ever saw. Well, actually, he had never seen an angel, but if he did, that would have been the most beautiful one yet. And he said, oh, give me a drink of that juice. Give me a bite of that bread. Jack, it wasn't what I ate and drunk. It's the fact that you shared it with me. Now, I tried to help your two brothers, but they looked right into my eyes and lied to me. Now, she reached in this boat. She here, Jack. Well, this looks like a mighty fine toy, but I ain't got time to play. I have to go. Jack, it's magic. Throw it up in there. So he threw it up in there, and it turned into a 60-foot sailing ship. And when he gets on, she said, now, Jack, invite anyone you see along the way. Because if you don't, the magic won't work. So he's just sailing, and he sees somebody whacking down trees and took toothpicks with their head. Hey, you down there. What's your name? My name's Hardy Hardhead. Well, hi, Hardy Hardhead. I'm going on an adventure to rescue the king's daughter. You want to come? Well, yeah, I'm up for adventure. So he climbs aboard. They're sailing along, and he sees a person with a 2-foot wide mouth, just scooping up the water. And, hey, you down there, what's your name? Well, my name's Dranks-a-Lot. Okay, Dranks-a-Lot, you want to come along? I'm going on an adventure to rescue the king's daughter. Yeah, I'm up for adventure. Climbs aboard, just sailing, and Dranks-a-Lot says, hey, down there's my brother. And there's another person with a 2-foot wide mouth, looks a lot like Dranks-a-Lot. But this time, he started, yeah, I'm up for adventure. He gets aboard, they're sailing. And it's like a little dust ball, a tornado just going around and around. And every now and then, Jack, he'd see an arm or a leg pop out. He said, that's a person. Hey, you down there, what's your name? Well, my name is, Runswell. Well, Runswell, you want to come on adventure to rescue the king's daughter? Yeah, I'm up for adventure, comes aboard, sailing along. Here's a woman with a gun. And he's, well, Jack, you gotta invite everybody to see. Well, she's got a gun. She could kill us. So, well, just ask her what she's shooting at. Hey, you down yonder. What are you shooting at? Well, I got a few miles down the road. I remembered I left my cap off my milk. And I looked back and I saw a fly on it. And so I was trying to shoot it. Well, did you kill it? Well, no, I just shot its left wing off. Just trying to tell it not to tell its brothers to come back. Well, you can see that well? Yeah. What's your name? My name's Seaswell. Okay, so come on, Seaswell, you want to go on an adventure? Yeah, I'm up for adventure. She comes aboard. There's so long and they get to Aunt Ugly's house. Swear that I'm going on. We're here to rescue the king's daughter. Oh, my. Oh, that's a game to play with. Well, if you could do what I could do, I'll give you the king's daughter. Okay, what do you want to do? She pulls out the bag, and she lays it on the stump. And, well, Auntie Ugly hadn't brushed or combed her hair number 100 years. There's leaves and twigs sticking out, and as she got it, as she did a somersault landing down, he first killed a family of possums. And, well, Hardy Hardhead comes up there, does 3 somersaults, and let those head first. That made her mad. Well, I know you can't do what I did next. What is it? Well, it's a drinking contest. Well, Draxler gets up there. Now, first one to finish up this spring wins. Okay? Okay. So, he goes up there, and Auntie Ugly doesn't halfway up when Draxler already up there and dried up the spring. And, well, oh, she's mad. She is horribly mad. And she said, well, I bet you can't do what I can do next. What is it? It's an eating contest. So, Eats-A-Lot comes up, gets there, and he said, now this is 1,000 acres court. There's your 1,000 acres court. Now, first one to finish this up will win. Okay. Well, she gets on this side. He's on this side, and he goes and he eats all of his court, and he eats the other half of Auntie Ugly's court. Woo! She is mad. And there is popcorn boogers flying out her nose. And then she said, well, I bet you can't beat me at this one, but it's a race. And you have to race 5,000 miles to the ocean and back. But here's the catch. You gotta get 2 eggshells, and you gotta fill up both of them with salt water and come back. So Runswell gets up there and she's running, she's racing, and she gets there, and Auntie Ugly ain't even 300 miles from the house yet. And she gets there, she gets the salt water, and she said, well, this ain't a race, and she unbuckled her legs because they go. And so she propped them up, laid the eggshells on her chest, and took a nap under a tree. And here comes the other. And she's evil. So she breaks her eggshells and puts a sleeping stick under her nose. Fills up her eggshells. Halfway back, Runswell should have been back by now. And then Seaswell looks, oh no, put a sleeping stick under her nose. Well, now we definitely ain't gonna win. As Cecil takes her gun, and she looks, and she shoots that sleeping stick under her nose. Where are my eggshells? She runs all the way back, gets eggshells, runs to the ocean, fills them up, gets back, and beats Auntie Ugly at the racing. Oh, she's so mad. She's just popcorn flying everywhere, and she's just jumping up and down, and she's smoke coming out of her ears and her nose. Until she shot down into the center of the earth. Now, if you hear down there in Hawaii, where there's volcanoes erupting, that's Auntie Ugly. She's still trying to get out from the center of the earth. And they took that reward and they built their own kingdom and had a rich life. And that's the end of that story.
I couldn't even remember all that. Thanks, Scott. Our featured teller this weekend is Adam Booth. Adam is an award-winning storyteller. He is a member of the Reporting Academy, and his stories and reportings have won such honors as 2 Parent Choice Silver Honors, 4 Storytelling World Awards and honors, the NSN National Storytelling Network Artist Grant, Emerging Artist Grant, and 4-time winner of the West Virginia Liars Contest. Adam teaches at Appalachia Studies at Shepherd University, and he's a storyteller who blends traditional folklore and music and an awareness of contemporary Appalachia. His original cinematic style, both humorous and touching, is influenced by generations of diverse storytellers from West Virginia. Please welcome with me, Adam Booth.
Hello. Thank you all for having me here, and thanks for coming tonight. I'm really excited to share a few stories with you. It's great to be here in a place where it's just not moving as fast as where I was this morning. I woke up today in Pittsburgh, and so it's nice to have landed somewhere where we can just relax and hear some stories and share some. Scott, thank you so much for Hardy Hardhead there. That was really wonderful. I'm glad that this is not a personality contest tonight, because I'd have to compete several times to, even get an honorable mention next to you. I started a new book yesterday called Ireland. I don't know if anybody has read this novel before. A friend of mine named Stasha Okowski gave it to me. He's a storyteller who lives in Maryland. And I started it yesterday in a coffee shop, what I call the mobile office. And the very beginning of it is about a storyteller in Ireland who makes his way through the countryside and happens upon someone's home. And they welcome him in and feed him and give him a place to stay. In exchange, he shares stories with them. And people come from all around to hear the stories in the home. And as I was reading, I thought, wow, I would love to be there for something like that. And then I was thinking, wait, that's what we do. That is our lives. And so I thought I would share some of my life doing that with you tonight. So here's a story that I picked up from somewhere else that I brought here. Not far from here, there is a low-lying lake that is the most crystal clear lake that you'd ever see in your whole life. It's fed by the snow melt of the Appalachian Mountains in the springtime. The lake is so clear that if you were to make your way to it and out across it, you could look down and see almost to the very bottom. See anything that's there living inside of it. And the folks that have made their way over to it, why, there's a story they would tell about what they see. For in this lake there is a school of fish. A school of fish that has this remarkable quality. See, if you look at just a single one of these fish, or the whole school together, they're covered from tip to back fin with blue scales. And not just any blue, a metallic blue. And these fish, as the school, they move together in such a way that those blue scales just shine, that metallic blue color. The school has a movement. It's an ancient choreography, a dance that they have done for as long as they've been in that lake, moving around, swirling around, twirling around. The way that these fish move together when the sun comes down through that clear water, reflects right off of them, casting light back up into the sky. The way that that school just murmurates around gives cause for all the birds in the sky to be jealous. Well, it came time of the year for their eggs to hatch. And there was a cluster of eggs, and they were all just moving around, when suddenly from over that way they heard and out of one of those eggs came a very small fish covered in those same metallic blue scales, and it swam out, and then next thing they knew there was two more of them. This isn't how fish eggs sound when they hatch, but in my story they do. A few more came out, and as they came out, they immediately joined that school. There was something inherent in them. More of them out and joining the school and moving around, their numbers increasing, until there was coming out of one of those fish eggs was a fish that, yeah, it had those metallic blue scales, some of them. But here and there, all the way down the length of its body, there were other scales. Scales that were gold in a pattern. And because this new fish looked different than all the rest, it wasn't welcomed in. It wasn't taught that old dance. In fact, it was made to be something of an outcast, and soon it learned to be a pariah, living a life of its own, exploring that lake, growing up on its own, seeing what was there out in the world. The days turned into weeks, turned into months. Well, there came a time when that patterned fish thought it had explored just about everything there was to see down there, until it was making its way over to the furthest reach of that lake. And as it was heading over there, it had a thought, I wonder, is there anything else outside of the water? So, try as it might, moving the fin on this side of its body so that the eye over here could break the surface of the water, it tried to get up there to see, but wore out. It tried with the fin on this side so the eye on this side of its body could get to the surface of the water, but almost. No. And as it caught itself there for a minute, suddenly, something splashed down, breaking the surface of the water. Whatever it was came down with such a force that it was covered in bubbles that made their way back up to the surface of the water. And that patterned fish saw right there was some metallic thing, and on it this brown thing wriggling like this in the water. And something inside of it said, get it. And so it did, without thinking it, just grabbed right onto it. The next thing it knew, it was pulled up out of the water, out of its control, so high, and the water that was once all around it was now rushing off of its body, down, down, and try as it might, it couldn't get free, because it was hooked. And it was different out of the water. The next thing it knew, a hand was coming around its body, grabbing it tight. a hand that belonged to an old fisherman. An old fisherman who had started his day like this. There was once an old fisherman who lived high up on a mountain range, up at the top, the ridge of it, where there was a small community, a number of little cabins up there. He lived way up there and had been a widower for 3 years. And he started his mornings the same, every single day. He'd wake up and make a cup of hot tea and take it out the back of his cabin where he had an old wooden rocking chair. And he'd rock and drink his tea, looking out down across the land as the sun rose and woke up everything in creation. And he'd look and listen as slowly the animals would awake. He'd drink his tea and watch as the warming rays of the sun woke up the trees in the valley. And he would drink his tea out there every morning because on some mornings, when that early wind would blow, he swore that in the wind, he could hear the voice of his wife coming back to visit him. And that was the case that morning. When she came and spoke to him. Old man, my dear old fisherman, one of the great joys of life is going out to help those who have less than you. And so he thought to himself, I might be old, but I can still fish. And maybe I could go down and catch a few fish from my neighbors up here on the ridge that are one. And so he gathered all of his stuff and made his way down to that lake that was crystal clear because it was fed from the snow out of those mountains. And he had an old boat that was still there, and he didn't have to paddle far. And he baited his hook and cast it, and as soon as he did, something was caught. And he set that hook and pulled it in, and as he reeled out of the water came this fish. He wrapped his hand around that fish. It was a fish unlike any he'd ever seen. His hand grasped it, and that's where that patterned fish was in that moment, trying to get free. It was caught, quite literally, out of water. And the old man looked at that fish, oh my, he said, oh, in all of my years I've never seen a fish quite like this. Oh, look at you, little fish, look at those golden scales. And the fish was caught and knew they had to do something to get back down into the water. Do you like those scales, the fish said? And the man was from the mountains. He believed in magic, so a talking fish meant nothing. Yes, he said, I do. I like those scales. And the fish said, the fish began to do that thing that we all do when we're trapped. It began to lie. You like those scales? Well, you should take some because they make wishes come true. What? They make wishes come true. The old man said, they do? Yes, they do, said the fish. You gotta take some, but you have to take them back home and throw them over your shoulder. And if you want the wishes to come true, you gotta put me back in the water. And the old man plucked two of them and held them tight in his fist and unhooked the fish and set it back down into the water, where it began to swim away, and he paddled back to the shore. Now, as soon as the fish was back in the water, I have to tell everybody, it swam as fast as it could all the way across the length of that lake, swam as fast as it could. And when it got to the other side, there was that skull just moving around, catching the light. And the fish swam right into it. You'll never believe it, the fish said. You'll never believe what happened. I was at the other end of the lake. I was trying to see if I could get out, and I swam this way, and I couldn't. I tried to swim this way, and I couldn't. And then someone came down, and I just grabbed on it and pulled me out, and this man's hand was around. I talked to him, and I came back. I just had to come tell you all. And the school stopped. And out of it swam an elder fish who looked at the patterned fish and said, Liar. You lie. No fish has ever made it out of the water and come back and lived to talk about it. Why do you lie to us like this? And the dance they resumed. All of them. Except for one. A hatchmate of that pattern fish. Swam over to that pattern fish slowly and said, "Is it true?" The pattern fish said, "Yeah." "Would you take me tomorrow to see where it happened?" I will. And that's where they found themselves on the next day. That pattern fish was swimming, and its hatchmate was coming right along behind it. And for the first time in its life, that pattern fish felt worth. It was right over here. I tried to swim like this to see this one, and I couldn't. I tried to swim this way to see like this, and I couldn't. And the next thing I knew, something just came out of the above there. All these bubbles were coming around it, and there was a brown thing on it, and I grabbed onto it by mouth. And then, right after it was done saying that, something broke the surface of the water. There was that thing again. It was just like that, it said. And then I did this. It grabbed onto it, and was pulled out of the water again for the second day in a row. Hooked. And the hand came around its body. A hand that belonged to the same old fisherman. Pattern fish, look at you. I have to tell you about what happened to me the night before. And the fish knew it was back in the hand of someone it had deceived. I was trying to get away, wiggling as fast as it could. No, stay still, said the old man. What? Stay still. Your scales made my wishes come true. It happened like this. That day before, the old fisherman had paddled to the shore, and he had made his way back up the mountain till he got to his home. And he had those 2 golden scales in his hand, and one at a time he pinched them and flicked them over his shoulder, making a wish in line with what his wife's voice had told him that morning, wishing for his neighbors to have more. And when he turned around, he saw there on the floor of his front room 2 golden scales. But when he picked them up, he noticed they had heft. Wait, they were real gold. Real gold that he took and traded at a store for a few bags of food that he set at the steps of the homes of his neighbors, for they had less than he did. And he heard about it because as soon as they found those bags, they were excited and word spreads quick in a small town. And so it was the next morning, he was sitting out with his cup of tea, this day's morning, sitting out with a cup of tea, watching as the sun woke up the world. When her voice came to him again for a second day in a row. Old man, my dear old fisherman, one of the great joys of life is helping those who are sicker than you. And so he slowly stood up out of his rocking chair thinking, well, I could go catch some fish and take the oil and give it as medicine to my neighbors. And so he made his way down back onto the lake, and just a few minutes later he found himself with the same pattern fish in his hand, telling the story to it. So fish, all of that happened. Your scales made my wishes come true. And the fish said, they did? Yes, they did. Well, take some more. That's what I like. And the fish looked down and saw below the surface of the water, its hatchmate was watching the whole thing. Take some more. Take as many as you want. 3 of those golden scales he plucked from the fish's side and set the fish back down in the water, knowing that's how they would come true. And he was gone. And when the fish came down into the water, the hatchmate said, "Everything you said was true." It was true. We have to tell everybody, said the hatchmate. Come on. And they were swimming back across that lake, all the way to the other side, where the school was just moving around and around, dancing like they always had. That underwater choreography went, the hatchmate swam in the middle of them. Everybody, what the patternfish said is true. I went and saw it with my own eyes. It went out of the water, there was a man, it came back in the water, and it's alive. Everything that it said was true. It happened 2 days in a row now. And the elder fish came out, and because it was one that looked like them that was telling the story, this time it was believed. And the elder fish said to the pattern fish, "Then, would you take us all to sea tomorrow?" "Oh, yes, I will." And so the next day, that's where they were. The patternfish was leading the whole school all the way to the furthest reach of the lake. And it told the story like this, and then something broke the surface of the water, and right then, here it came, a third day in a row. Just like that! It grabbed onto it, pulled it out of the water, and as the water came off of its body, the old man's hand wrapped around the fish for a third day in a row. Patternfish, I thought I would find you here. See, the old man knew all the old Appalachian stories and knew this would have to happen to get to the end. Fish, your scales, I took them back to my house. And he continued with the story. The old man had taken those scales back to his house and one at a time plucked them out of his hand and threw them over his shoulder. And when he turned around after having made the wish about his neighbors being well, he saw there at eye level 3 golden scales floating in the air. See, the windows were open and they were caught in a cross breeze, just around and around they went. He watched at the magic of those 3 golden scales just floating right there. Like, out the window they flew. Gone. Well, you know what happened to them. They flew out the window and landed in the windows of 3 neighbors, flying in their open windows, landing right on the bed sheets of 3 ill kin. And when their family came to check on them, they saw there was gold that could be traded for medical care. And so those 3 households soon were on their way to being well. And he heard about it. And so this day, as he drank his tea for a 3rd day in a row, the wife's voice came to him in the wind. "Old man, one of the great joys of life is going back to tell those who have helped you, thank you." And so he had made his way down to the water, caught that fish again. It was holding it in his hand, telling the story to that fish, and the fish looked down to make sure that they were all watching. And below the surface, there were all of those metallic blue fish looking up. "Oh, fish," he said, "my wishes came true again." And the fish said, "They did. Well, then take more scales, take the rest of them, take them all." And the old man said, "No, no, no. I just have one last wish. I will take one." And he unhooked the fish, and back in the water it went, and he was gone. And when the fish came back into the water, the whole school looked, and the elder fish led. You spoke the truth. Mm-hmm. Come home with us. You belong with us. We never listened to you. We never knew you. But you belong with us. Come home with us. The patternfish looked back and said, "No. I don't have a home there. This is where my life has meaning. I'm going to stay here." And the elder fish looked at that patternfish and said, "You should come with us. Because if you stay here, then surely you will die." Because it saw how So many parts of its body had been removed, and knew that if it stayed there, the rest would go too. Come home with us, it said. We have so much to learn from you, and you have some to learn from us. And so that's what happened. Back they went. Now you might be wondering what happened to the old fisherman. He made his way back up to his cabin on the top of the mountains. He had that one scale. He had one last wish, one last thing he wanted in his life. And so he pinched that scale and closed his eyes tight. And as he flipped it over his shoulder, he made that wish. And then opened his eyes and saw on the wall just a few feet in front of him a glow, a reflection, a glowing light of something that was behind him, and he was filled with hope. He turned around, and that glow got brighter and brighter, and as he turned around there, this front room was this bright light, a pulsating light. And out of that light, he heard a voice. Old man, my dear old fisherman. And out of the light reached a hand that he grabbed onto as it pulled him into that light as his wish came true. Now, the other people that lived up there saw this light flashing out of the old fisherman's cabin. I thought it was a little crazy. Anyway, the old fisherman, we got to see what's happening in his house. They went over to his cabin. When they opened the doors, because he didn't answer the knocking, it was empty. For his life was finished. But theirs weren't. They had new life. They had new health. And so they began to travel away and down off of that mountain ridge. When the next springtime came around and the snow melted, they came down and began to play around that lake, that crystal clear lake, so pure you could see almost to the bottom. And some of them took boats out on it. Soon they began to tell stories about what they could see inside of it. A school of fish that moved around. Such synchronicity, such beauty, such choreography, that they were transfixed looking at it. And they said, if you look deep, sure, there was this metallic blue shine, but if you looked really deep into it, every now and then, you could see a flickering, a glimmering, a glinting, more valuable than gold. Thank you. I want to switch from the traditional to the personal. I want to tell you a story that is actually 3 stories in one. I think of this as a triptych of stories. And it's a story that I created when I was studying. I love to study other storytellers' work. And this comes from my background as I went to music school, and you're always studying other composers' work. And so I was studying the work of J. O'Callaghan quite a bit as I was thinking about this story, thinking about the way he structures stories. And so this is a story very much influenced by his work. And I'm sure if you happen to know him as a storyteller, you'll probably hear elements of his work in what I'm about to share with you. This is a story that I call Smoke. My hometown neighborhood existed because of glass. You ever stop to think about why your hometown was there? Or why your neighborhood was in that hometown? My neighborhood was there because of glass. If you came out of my house where I grew up, down to 9th Avenue and turned to the right, 2.5 blocks down, there was an enormous glass factory. It's called Owens, Illinois. They made all kinds of resourceful bottles for RC Cola. But they also made handmade pieces, artistic pieces. It was a glass factory made of enormous red bricks. They were ready. It was a huge building. It took up an entire city block. Everyone in that part of the town, their lives revolved around this glass factory. Enormous and red. It had 5 tapered smokestacks coming off of the top of it. They raked against the sky. It was an Appalachian castle. And inside of the castle, there was a dragon that lived there. And the dragon was always setting the castle on fire. Its fiery breath. We knew this because just behind all of our houses was the dispatch for the fire trucks. And very often, our childhoods were underscored by the sounds of soon we would see the fire engines racing down 9th Avenue to get to the glass factory to put out the fire that the dragon started. All the people that lived around it were the servants of the king there. They all worked there. In reality, most of the people who lived in my neighborhood did work at the glass factory. There wasn't a dragon there, but the glass factory was always catching on fire. And those fire trucks were always racing down there to put it out. Now, a block closer to where I lived, from the glass factory, is where my granny lived. Granny lived in a fiery house. When you looked at it, it was made out of yellow bricks. Inside, the carpet was orange. She had a floor furnace. You know what a floor, anybody remember or have a floor furnace growing up? She had a floor furnace. There was an enormous grate right in the floor, and underneath, a huge piece of machinery. And whenever it kicked on, it would shake the entire house. I loved to stand and look down because there was a pilot light that was bright blue. And whenever it would turn on, if you were standing over it, your shirt would billow out. She had a floor furnace, but she also had a fireplace, which meant that twice a year it needed to be cleaned out. And that's when she would call the chimney sweep. The chimney sweep! We loved the chimney sweep. He was the most mysterious man in our whole neighborhood. The chimney sweep. He was mysterious because no one knew where he lived. The chimney sweep. And yet everyone invited him into their homes. The chimney sweep, he was mysterious because when he went to clean out your chimney, he would also do magic tricks. And because of that, they would call all the children in the neighborhood whenever he was coming to clean someone's chimney. And it was time for Granny's chimney to be cleaned, and so the word spread back another block to where we lived, and all my friends in that part of the neighborhood, the chimney sweep was coming. They said, the chimney sweep! And we were excited. We loved the chimney sweep. It was so mysterious. The chimney sweep was coming. And so we all gathered together, all the little kids, and to celebrate the chimney sweep, we had a parade. We formed an imaginary marching band, and we began to down 9th Avenue. We had drums. We were parading for the chimney sweep. The chimney sweep. The chimney sweep. We had trombones. The chimney sweep. The chimney sweep. We paraded with drums. The chimney sweep and trombones. Drums and trombones. They're the only instruments for pantomiming. We marched down the street, and off in the distance we heard. The fire trucks were coming to join the parade for the chimney sweep. Here they came. No. They went right past us, off to the glass factory. The dragon was at it again. They went all the way past us. We kept marching all the way down until we got to Granny's. We turned. There was Granny's fiery house. Right next to it is where Maxine Greathouse lived. She was the neighborhood snoop. She knew everybody's business. And as we stood there looking at Granny's house, we could see her looking out the gossamer curtain of the kitchen to see what was going on out there. No one acknowledged her, except for one trombone player. He waved like this. She disappeared behind the curtain. Our instruments disappeared from our imaginations. And we went into the house. Inside Granny's house. She always had the radio playing in the next room, and she loved big band music. So the moment we got in, it was bum bum ba da da do da do da do do bum bum ba da da do da do bum bum. We found a place on the orange carpet, each kid sitting down on their knees. Bum bum ba da do do bum bum ba da da do. Now Granny was a cigarette smoker. She was from a generation where cigarette smoking was glorious and ubiquitous. And so she had a cigarette lit. She was smoking it as she was folded up on the couch, listening to that big band music. And while she had one in her hand lit, in the ashtray there was another one lit. And the windows and doors really had not been open for a very long period, as long as she had lived there. So there were decades of cigarette smoke just marbling through the air. We sat on that orange carpet, looking around for the chimney sweep. Where could he be? We were very excited. The big band was getting quieter. Finally, one of us said, "Where's the chimney sweep?" And Granny pointed with her cigarette up like that, folded up on the couch. She pointed, she said, "I think he's up on the roof." "Oh, of course, up on the roof. That's where the chimney sweep should be. How come we hadn't seen him when we paraded down there?" But Maxine Greathouse had seen him up on the roof. We waited and waited. Beep, beep. Finally, the front door flew open like that, and there was the chimney sweep standing right there. He was very tall, very tall. At that time in my life, I spent a lot of time playing with Legos and Play-Doh, and looking at the chimney sweep, he looked like a Play-Doh snake that had been stretched through a Lego chimney. He was very tall and thin, and accentuating that, he had a stovepipe hat on. He had a tuxedo jacket with tails, and in one hand a leather bag. And as soon as the door opened like this, the band on the radio kicked into the shout chorus. And he jumped up into the air and landed in the midst of us. It was his theme song right there. And we all clapped and cheered for the chimney sweep. And as soon as he landed right there in the middle, he was snapping his finger. He set down the bag. He said, "Look here, children, look here, look, watch. And he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a deck of cards. He shuffled them in the air and fanned them out like this. He pointed to a trombone player and said, "Pick a card, pick one." Trombone player picked the card. "Don't show me." He showed the rest of us what it was. Put it back in the deck it went. He shuffled them again and into his suit pocket they went. And then he began to clean. He opened up that leather bag and pulled out an array of brushes. Each one that he took out, he would sweep just a little bit around the hearth into a dustpan. And when he was done with one brush, he would snap his fingers like this. He had a little igniter ring on his finger. He'd snap like that, and a little flame would come up and a puff of smoke like that. And he'd get our attention. He would teach us a lesson. "Now remember, children," he would say, "never ever play in the chimney." He'd get another brush, clean a little more, some soot from out of the inside of the doors. When he was done, "Remember, children, never put your toys up in the chimney." Never play in the chimney? Ever put your toys in the chimney? This was very counterintuitive to most children. Because the greatest figure of all came through the chimney with toys. My friends were confused. I wasn't. It wasn't counterintuitive to me. We were Jewish. Wait a minute, I thought. Maybe the chimney sweep is Jewish Santa Claus. He continued doing his dance and cleaning things up, and when he had used almost all of his brushes, the dustbin was full. And he turned it back to the same trombone player and said, "Look right there, look there." And under the pile of soot, there was a little corner of a card poking out. "Pull it out." He pulled it out, shook it up. "Is that your card?" He lifted it up. "Oh, it was the ace of spades. It was his card. How did he do it? The chimney sweep. What a mysterious man." And he took a bow so deep that the tip of his hat touched the orange carpet. And the band on the radio finished their song. Ba-da-da-da-da-da-dum. And then it was time for the big act. The radio started the next song. Started with drums. Then trombones. And out of that bag, he pulled a brush that telescoped piece by piece. It got longer and longer until it stretched all the way across the room from corner to corner. At the farther end, there was a circle of thick black bristles. He opened up the doors to the hearth, and we watched as he put that circle of bristles into the chimney and began to push. He got closer and closer, and that brush went up into the chimney. It got shorter and shorter until there was just a little bit left, and he pushed it up like that. He had our attention. He took his hat off and smacked it like that, and it collapsed down until it was like a plate. He flipped that plate up the chimney, and it was gone. He turned to us, snapped his fingers one more time. "Now remember, children," he said, "don't ever go climbing into the chimney." And then we watched as he laid on his back and climbed into the chimney. Arms first, shoulders, navel, knees, then it was just his feet dangling, and he was gone. Oh, we waited just a minute. The end of that brush came back down. The end of the handle had a hook on it, and it hooked that leather bag by the handle, and up the chimney it went. He was gone. The radio had lost its connection, so it was just static, static that accompanied the swirling, the marbling of that cigarette smoke. One of us said, "Where'd the chimney sweep go?" Granny was still folded up on the couch. She pointed with her cigarette, which was now only that big. She pointed like that and said, "I think he's up on the roof." Up on the roof, that's always where he was, and we couldn't find him. We ran outside, couldn't see him from the porch, ran out in the yard, looked up. No chimney sweep. Where had he gone? I wonder if Maxine Greathouse had seen where he went. One of my friends said, "Wow, look over there." We looked over because all the trucks were still over at the glass factory. We saw those great smokestacks against the sky. One of my friends said, "Do you think he cleans those out too?" Another friend said, No. I bet he lives in them." We reformed the parade, the band. We began to play our drums and trombones as we marched back to our part of the neighborhood. As we went, we argued over the imaginary music. Did he live in the smokestacks or clean them out? Did he clean them out or did he live in them? When we got back to our part of the neighborhood, the only consensus, the only agreement we had was that the chimney sweep was our neighborhood hero. If you were to just lift right up into the sky from our neighborhood and fly all the way to the center of town and drop right in the middle of downtown, you'd be at Model Furniture. It was my great-grandparents' furniture store. Downtown was a very different part of my growing up than my neighborhood. See, in my neighborhood, everybody worked at the factory. Downtown, people dressed up just to walk on the sidewalks. And that's where the furniture store was. My great-grandparents owned it. My great-grandfather had built it. It was an enormous furniture store. Like I said, it was called Model Furniture. It was a very deceptive name. You would think everything would be quite small. For doll houses. Wow. The back of the building, there was a secret parking lot for family. We would park there, and there was a secret back entrance for family. It was right next to the enormous freight elevator that went to the second floor where everything was covered in plastic. When you in the back door, there, showrooms just as far as you could see, all kinds of furniture. Sofas, ottomans, end tables, lamps and lampshades, and as far as you could see, it was every imaginable shade of plaid. This was the 80s. And here and there, thump down, thump, were television sets, enormous wooden cabinets that took 4 people to lift, handles on the end, and the screens were only this big. They were always playing soap operas whenever we went down there. I spent a lot of time at this furniture store as a kid. There was always soap operas in stereo. It was enough to drive you mad. Whenever I'd go in, I'd look around and see all this furniture, all these showrooms. When I was a kid, I spent a lot of time watching The Price is Right. And to see all this furniture, it was just like being on The Price is Right. In my imagination, from behind a curtain over here, Bob Barker would step out. And he'd have that drumstick microphone right there, and his sedated hair, and his perfect teeth. And Rod Rodney would say, "Adam Booth, come on down." And I'd get to run through all the furniture, and a wheel would appear, and I would spin it, and the beauties would be there clapping for me. And when I won, he would turn and indicate all the prizes that I just won. In reality, when we went in there, my great-grandfather would shuffle over. He had a sweet tooth the size of Texas. He'd pull a Tootsie Pop out of his pocket. "Here you go, kiddo. Go play." We were allowed to play anywhere in the furniture store, except the front 2 showrooms. They flanked both sides of the main entrance from 4th Avenue. The walls in both of those showrooms, complete glass. So any passerby could do some window shopping. We were never allowed to play there because we'd always mess it up. We'd get candy on something. Never allowed to play there unless there was a parade. Now, I've come to find as an adult that my hometown had far more parades than most hometowns. We had all the normal parades, you know, parade for 4th of July, parade for Thanksgiving, but then we had all kinds of extra special parades. We had the West Virginia Tournament of Bands parade, and all the bands, high school bands, would come and parade down 4th Avenue. We were always having ticker tape parades for minor athletic achievements. And then my very favorite parade of all, because it was the only one that happened at night, the Fire Prevention Parade. The Fire Prevention Parade always happened in October, National Fire Prevention Month. And all the schools were involved. There was always a theme for the Fire Prevention Parade, like Hear the Beat When You Sleep. And they would take that theme and spread it out among the schools, and all the kids would color posters. And if you were the winner of the poster contest, you got crowned Mr. and Mrs. Spark. You got to ride a convertible in that parade as Mr. and Mrs. Spark. And that wasn't the only thing in the parade. There were floats of all different kinds. There were dance teams. There were costume characters. There were fire trucks. And always at the very end, the high school marching band. They'd come along, led by all their majorettes, doused in cans of Aquanet hairspray, and very unironically twirling fire. You see where this is going. Well, when there was a parade, we were allowed to sit in one of those front showrooms because my great-grandfather thought if I could have a model family in a model showroom of model furniture, it would bring the business in. So whenever there was a parade, we'd go down and sit there and watch the parade from one of those rooms. This one was always made up like a bedroom. This one was always made up like a living room. It was Fire Prevention Parade time. We went down and parked in our secret spot. We went in through the back door, and I could see across the entire store. This month, the bedroom was made to look like a child's bedroom. There were bunk beds. And I looked up at my great-grandfather and said, "Can I watch the parade from the bunk beds?" And even though he answered, the only thing I heard was, "Adam Booth, come on down!" And I lifted up into the air, flew over all the furniture, and landed right there next to the bunk beds. You know which one I got into, right? Yeah, the top one. I climbed up that ladder, stretched out across that top mattress, looked out the big glass window, and there the crowd was gathering on 4th Avenue. I could see a paper banner that stretched from model furniture to the other side of the street, Star Furniture. It had this year's theme that said, "Smoke's no joke. Take fire seriously." And here came the parade. Led by an enormous red pickup truck. The tailgate was down, 2 speakers in the back blasting out techno music, dunce, 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 as it rolled 5 miles an hour down the avenue. Behind it, a team of enthusiastic little girls in sequined uniforms with batons that they were going like this with and tapping. They had taps on their shoes. I don't really know what people do with batons, what you call that, but they were moving it like this, up and down, and their batons were on fire. Twirling. Well, I know that much. Thank you. They weren't twirling yet. They were just doing up and down like this. When they got to the place in front of model, they all turned. There was a big crowd there. The music changed, and the girls started to do a little routine where they twirled their batons. And at the very end of it, they tossed them up like that. I watched as all those batons went up like this, twirling around, the fire flirting dangerously close to that paper banner. Back down they fell. They caught them, most of them. The audience clapped so much that when they tossed one more time, they threw them with extra energy. And one of the batons went up and happened to land up on top of the place where the rope was holding onto that paper banner, and it teetered just long enough to catch the corner of it on fire. Down the baton fell. The girls caught them all. The truck started to go. They turned like this and followed it. It was like the Pied Piper leading all the children out of the 4th Avenue parade route. They were gone. Next up was a float. It was made to look like one of the living rooms in all of our South Side neighborhoods, carpet and all. There was a couch, a fake chimney that reached up, up, up like this. And as it came slowly down the street, that chimney happened to grab onto that flaming banner. And it had burned just enough that it had come loose from the rope here. just a little like this. Most people didn't see it. They were looking at all the costume characters around the float. It was, there were lots of firefighters, but there was also Smokey the Bear. There were people dressed like smoke detectors. There was even Abraham Lincoln. No, it wasn't Abraham Lincoln. It was the chimney sweep. He was marching alongside, he had that tall stovepipe hat on, his jacket with the tails and his leather bag, and he was waving, hello, hello, and everybody knew him. Everybody knew the chimney sweep. He was such a mysterious man. Hi, chimney sweep. They waved at him like this. He's waving at everyone. He turns this way to wave in front of the crowd that's right next to me, and I'm up on the back, waving like this, and he sees me, hello, and I'm pointing, no, not hello, look, look. He looks up and sees that that burning banner is now wrapping around the chimney of the float. Ah, yes. He sets his bag down, opens it up, begins to pull out that telescoping brush. It got longer and taller and longer, and finally when it was fully extended, the end of it, that circle of bristles, he had it teetering over towards where the banner was, trying to rake it down off of that part of the float. The people tried to help him out. Higher, they said, put it up higher. He held it up higher. And over here people said, no, no, lower. He pulled it lower, lower. Over here they said higher and up higher, lower, no, lower, higher. They were shouting higher and lower. And for a kid that grew up watching The Price is Right, this was awesome. I was in that bed mattress looking through the glass window. It was like an enormous TV screen, and the crowd was shouting higher and lower. And he was playing that game, trying to scrape the banner off, and finally he caught it and pulled it down. And the firefighters grabbed around, came around, and they smothered that flame. People clapped and cheered for the chimney sweep. He's our hero. He's really our hero. And stepping out from behind that chimney was Bob Barker. And he shook the chimney sweep's hand and then pointed back towards model furniture to show him all the furniture and prizes he had just won. No, I had dozed off a little bit laying there in that mattress up on the bunk bed and blended reality of the parade with my dreams. But I was wrestled back up by the sound of the fire truck engines. The fire trucks were coming along. The sirens were going off like that, and the lights were flashing, and all of a sudden, they turned off the parade route, rushing down a side street. The dragon was at it again. And the only thing left in the parade was the marching band. From the high school, here they came, you could hear them. And then, and they started to play from off in the distance. In addition to the drums, you could hear the tubas. Boom, 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 boom. Got loud, boom, boom. They were playing, feeling hot, hot, hot. Boom, 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 feeling hot, hot, hot. And there were the majorettes twirling the fire. And they paraded past model furniture down to the corner of 4th Avenue and 9th Street. And they turned, boom, 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 boom. As the parade wrapped up, you could hear those tubas off in the distance. Boom, ba-dum, boom, boom, boom. Ten years later, I was a member of that very same marching band. It was October. It was October and Friday night. And I was standing with the rest of the marching band just off of the edge of the end zone at our high school football field. I grew up around Friday night football, high school football, from a very young age, so much so that even as an adult now, when October comes around, it gets real crisp. I'm taken back to dressing in layers to sit on those cold metal bleachers. And I have a craving for a concession stand hot dog wrapped in a paper napkin. And I have memories of it being the first time of the year when you realize it's cold enough that you can see your breath. And normally, that breath would have come out and around my trumpet mouthpiece, but not this night. See, it was homecoming. And our drum major had been voted by her peers to be on the homecoming court. And so she was up there at the head of the 50-yard line, and I was standing in for her as the drum major. So instead of the trumpet, I had a mace in my hand, a whistle in my teeth. And we watched as those two teams tumbled back and forth over the gridiron as the seconds counted down. Then it was halftime. They ran off the field. and I blew that foggy breath through the whistle, tweet, tweet, and up everybody called, snapping into position. I signaled to the snare drummer and he began to tap, 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 and we took the field, tap, tap, making a great arc from 20 to 20, except for a gap on the 50. And I climbed up on the scaffolding, up by the bleachers. I tweeted again, tweet, tweet, up, there was a ripple of brass instruments. And I began to conduct, tap, tap, da, da, and they played, bum, ba, da, da, dum, bum, 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 ba, dee, dum, bum, ba. It was, can't take my eyes off of you, you're just too good to be true. It was the same song that our high school marching band had played every single homecoming since Frankie Valli first crooned it out. Since back in the days when high schoolers knew why there was a homecoming. And as we played and I conducted, up from the press box, the announcer called out as the homecoming court came forth. He said, you'd be like heaven to touch. I want to hold you so. The junior class attendant. And I thank God. And then came the senior class attendants, and one of them was our drum major. We were so excited because one of them would be the homecoming queen. The senior class attendants. And we had an agreement that I would bring the band down really loud pianist until he would call the name of which one was the homecoming queen, and I'd bring him up in a fortissimo blouse. We waited, getting really quiet. Da, 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 da. And then he said her name, and I brought him up like this, and they played ba-da, 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 bum, bum, ba-da, ba-da, and they kicked back like this, whoa! And then played I Need You, Baby, and if it's quite all, and everybody was super excited, not just because the band was loud and they were singing along, but there was extra excitement rushing through their veins down on the field because our drum major had just been crowned homecoming queen. Maybe for the first time in the history of high school marching bands. We were so excited for her. One of us was the queen, one of us. But it was even more exciting because she didn't have a mom. And her dad hardly came to anything that we did. But as I conducted from the podium, I looked down and I saw tonight on the 50-yard line, he was there on this special night. And he took her in his arms and began to dance her around in a slow circle as the band played. And onto the field came rushing our high school mascot, the Knight. A knight came out. He was riding a real horse. He had fake armor, but he was riding a real horse. He came out to the 50-yard line and got off the horse, and his hands was a pillow, and on it was a glass tiara made at the glass factory in the neighborhood. She bowed down, and he placed it on her head. And as he did, the fireworks took the sky, lighting it up with those pyrotechnics, and one of them happened to be bigger than the rest. And the report was so great that it jarred my memory just for a moment. I looked down and recognized her dad. It was the chimney sweep. Her dad was the chimney sweep. What a mysterious man. And it made sense because she was just like him. She was tall and thin and creative. The chimney sweeper, our hero. His daughter had just been crowned the queen by our knight. The fireworks stopped. The band turned and marched off the field. The hero and the queen had disappeared somewhere. And up above the stadium when those fireworks were done, there was just a mass of smoke that was left. Smoke that slowly sank down all the way through the third quarter. And then when we got to the fourth quarter, it just sat right on those cold metal bleachers and stayed there. It stayed there till long after the end of the game. It stayed there till after everybody had left, all the townspeople, after the band had left, and the knight, and the queen, and the hero, after our victory, after those great stadium lights had been switched off. The only thing that remained was a cloud of smoke. Thank you. Thank you.